Have you always been a fan of horror?
Always. Yeah. I think from the time I was really little. And that probably stems from my dad used to watch a lot of horror films when I was younger. And I can remember sitting down and watching like American Werewolf in London with him when I was really little, and then Nightmare on Elm Street. And he would never get scared. And I would sit next to him like, ah. And I'm watching it trying to play like I'm not scared. And then that night I'd be in bed like, oh, I'm up all night, but for whatever reason, I think I'm a little addicted to the thrill of that, of being scared. I enjoy it. So, there is that. But yes, I've always liked horror. I think I found Stephen King when I was in middle school, and was really shy and would hide out in the library rather than socialize, and picked up his short stories and was just hooked from that point on. But before him, it was Benicula, which was like this vampire bunny story when I was little. There was always some kind of story like that that I was attracted to, from an early age. And I can't really explain it. It's just something I've always liked. So,
Well, I mean, theoretically, I'm a horror author. I'm with you. I love horror,
right.
adore it very much. But I like that gives me a focal point for my fears that are otherwise not localized. It's just vague things like, what if I get a disease? What if the economy takes a turn? What if there's a civil war? All this stuff that I really can't control. But if you let me focus on the bunny, is it going to drain the juice from my carrots? Well, now
Right.
there's a nice thing. I can fight a bunny.
True. And it's so funny because people in COVID, like, I think they either went to like rom-coms or horror, and I totally embraced, not that I always was into horror, but it's almost like I went even deeper during that time period. And I think it's probably, you're right, a lot of that, because it just helps me cope. It helps me cope to kind of work through scenarios and to watch somebody on a screen or whatever, and then to leave it there. So I think you work through a lot of that angst. You're right, like anxiety. So I probably have some kind of latent anxiety that I haven't necessarily treated, that horror sort of is my therapy for.
Well, you mentioned that you're extra paranoid if you're at the bar or whatever, and you're thinking about all the different things that could happen. Have you tried not reading horror for a while to see if that intensifies?
I haven't actually done that. I'll be honest. I think it would be hard for me because all of the entertainment I'm attracted to sort of runs in that vein. But I should try that. That would be an interesting like an experiment, I think, to see how that would go. Um, yeah, maybe I will. Maybe I'll try that. See. But the thing is, I'm like not the type of person who will get into a rom-com. I always tell my friends like romance drives me crazy, and I have all this respect for romance writers, but I can't. I'm like, if I'm going to read romance, it needs to end tragically, and that's terrible. I don't know what that says. But if it doesn't have a Titanic kind of ending, I'm just not into it. So,
Well, it's not final. It always ends at like the easiest part. Not always, but frequently. Like, oh, you've achieved total love. Great. Let me come back 10 years and see how you're keeping things fresh.
exactly.
How have you learned to put up with your new partner's idiosyncrasies? I don't care about the romantic horse ride. Let me know when you find toenails that are on the bathroom counter. How do you deal with that?
And that to me, that is some true horror right there. If I find that on my countertop, I'm horrified.
I would just go to this is a spoiler for a very old show, but I'm an old man and I used to watch Friends, as did most of the nation, and they were forever trying to sell us on Ross and Rachel. Will they get together? In the first few seasons, I was into it. Will it happen? Will it happen? But by the time they get spoiler, by the time they get to the finale and he races to the airport to meet her and they're trying to convince us this is the time, like, no, I have watched them get together and break up 8 or 9 times over the course of this show. There's no way that's going to work out. I'm not buying it. So it's not a satisfying ending. Whereas with horror, one of them is dead. That's a final ending. I know for sure how that story goes now.
Yeah, and I don't know what it says about me, but some of the ones I like the most are the ones that like they almost haunt you afterwards. So, Stephen King's story, the Mist movie haunted me, but I love that movie. I think it's brilliantly done. That ending to me is one of the best horror endings ever, bar none. That the Mist, and I will show like everyone I know. I always like you have to watch this. And my brother, when I made him watch it, he's like, "Why did you make me watch this? This is terrible." I'm like, "Because it's amazing." But he's like, he doesn't get it. But yeah, I think I have a thing for that. I guess because of the realism, but also I like that it's that horror can elicit a strong emotion out of you, and so I think maybe that's what I'm always looking for when I'm consuming entertainment. So
I'm a huge fan of both the novella and the movie. I thought the novella was great originally, and didn't see the ending switch on the movie coming. But when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's better. That's
Yeah.
like a breath of fresh air." I saw that true story. My wife and I got engaged the night we saw The Mist.
Oh,
It wasn't planned. It was just we were talking, and I had planned to propose later. It's just we just happened to get engaged that night, and then I went and I stood in line for a Nintendo Wii at midnight and got it. Oh, what a wonderful night! It was
that was like a roller coaster of things.
and a Nintendo. Oh my god! But yes, that ending is like we never get this. It never ends this way, and it's so nice. Not every time, but just once in a while. And it
Yeah,
makes me
exactly.
pay attention to both Stephen King's work and the director Frank Darabont a little bit close in the future, because I know they'll shoot the hostage if they're holding my
Yeah.
beloved character ransom. I know they'll do it sometimes, and I feel like horror writers have to do that to establish that credibility to keep me in suspense like that.
Agreed, and I love the freedom of it. So as a horror writer, you really don't have the same constraints that other stories have. So romance people like a happy ending, and you don't necessarily have to do that. In horror, you're looking to shock people here and there, and so I do like that part too. So
Well, let's what's your favorite Stephen King story? Is it The Mist?
oh gosh, I mean, it's hard for me to pinpoint because I love his work so much. I think he's like one of my primary inspir I mean, probably every horror writer says that, right? I really love Pet Cemetery. I love it. I think because of the parental, like it's such a normal fear, that whole idea of your kid running out into a road and you losing your child. And to me, like there's no other grief that's quite as visceral as that. And that's that fear. And then this idea that you can bring someone back, but it's not them. I love that idea too. And so there's a lot about that story I really, really like. There's things about it that are really strange, but there's some prose in it that I think are just, it's like beautifully written in parts. There's the part at the end where they're on the bike, and the way that he described it and the way that he wrote the words, it is musical to me, like right at the end. So I really like those. But when I started, I read a short story called Grandma. That one stays with me forever because honestly, like I had a great grandmother when I was a kid who was blind and bedridden. And she scared me so bad when I was little. She'd want you to come up to the bed and she'd want to feel your face and she couldn't see. But when you're really young, it's really disconcerting and scary. She was like a very large woman in this bed and like, blind. And I remember being really terrified. So when I read his story, it sort of validated that fear for me. Like, oh, it's okay because you know what? People are scared of older people sometimes. And so actually that was one of the inspirations for Flight 171 because my monster is sort of inhabiting the body of an older lady who's deteriorating. So, but that short story is probably one of my favorites too. I will always remember it. It was the first thing I read of his, and it just really stuck with me.